Hello, my name is Henry Mitchell III, Douglasville's Mayor Pro Tem. Welcome to Continuing Moments in African American History. Once again, welcome to Continuing Moments in African American History. I think you'll enjoy this. Now, this program, we're going to take a journey. We're going to talk to one of the first African American city council members, one of the first elected judges right here in the city and the county of Douglas County. We're going to take a journey down to the African American Museum. A lot is going to happen here, but in this first segment, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sit down and talk to one of the first African American females who walked through the doors of Douglas County High School. That journey was unique, and I think once you sit down and witness this interview, you're going to find that it's rewarding. Also in this segment, you get an opportunity to be a part of the foot soldiers. Now, these individuals, Mother Parker, James Vance, and Miss Arnold, were the foot soldiers in Douglasville and Douglas County in helping move the voters' rights and the voter registration, and they kind of kept that movement started, or got it started, to help in getting us to the polls and vote. Now, let's all get ready to get involved with our first guest, Miss Carol Williams Hooks. And let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back in your younger days, in your youth, when you were here in Douglasville and Douglas County, and you were attending R.L. Cousin, I think the school, which is now Stewart Middle School, correct?
That is correct. Formerly, before going to R.L. Cousin, I attended Winston Elementary School in Winston, Georgia.
Yes, yes.
Winston was a very small school, and I couldn't understand as a child. We were in a school that the building was dilapidated, but we had the best teachers. We had 2 grades in one classroom, and I couldn't understand as a child why we would bypass a school in Winston, Georgia, elementary school, and have to come to Douglas County, have to come to Douglasville to school. Right, right. As a child, I didn't understand. I thought, well, if they close this school, we're going to that school. Because it was in my neighborhood, it was right up the street from me, but we bypassed that school and got on a bus and rode about 5 miles to Douglasville.
Now, let's talk about that 5-mile journey to get to Douglasville, to Douglas County High School, where the Tigers are now formally, and which have been always the Tigers. How was that to be one of the first? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cousin was, not Mr. Cousin, I apologize, Mr. Zachary, Thomas Zachary, was one of the first, along with yourself, to walk through the doors of Douglas County High School. How was that?
Okay, well, it was really, at first it was, you know how, like a kid with a piece of candy, it was all exciting, looking forward to it. We had to get permission from the superintendent of schools of Douglas County to attend. And he informed us, he said, now, you really want to think about this, because once you go, you cannot go back.
Got you.
So we were excited, myself, my cousin Cheryl Mitchell, she was Cheryl Sparks at the time, Marjorie Bonner, Thomas Zachary, and Jackie Fowler. Our first experience at Douglas County High together, we rode the bus to school. We got to school, we got off the bus, and we got a lot of stares. And of course, some people in the background were mumbling the N-word. Okay. But actually, the teachers were very supportive. Robert Alexander was the principal, and he was, I think maybe he was a fair person, you know. So it was a rewarding experience, but it was a very trying time also.
I can imagine.
This journey in integrating Douglas County schools has made me who I am today. Although every day wasn't a good day and there were some bad days, But overall, the experience, I wouldn't have traded for anything.
Hi, I'm Mayor Mickey Thompson. The City of Douglasville and City TV is very proud to present this special feature on Black History Month.
Welcome back to Continuing Moments in African American History. Let's talk about voting, because I think from what I've understood and what I've read and things I've understood from those who talk in the community about voting, let's elaborate on voting.
Okay.
How did you guys manage to get people out to vote? I mean, you guys were considered the foot soldiers, so if you don't mind me calling you that, and I respectfully call you that, but you guys were the foot soldiers, so you guys did a lot of getting people registered to vote,
Yes.
getting them to the polls, and where were you doing all this? I mean, how did you make that happen? I mean, Mr. Vance or Mother Parker, I mean, any comments on that?
Well, just like I said, we set up a registration at Golden, and I even Reverend the pastor that married Reba, what was his name?
Golden.
From Gold.
Pace.
Reverend Pace.
Reverend Pace. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I changed his registration from the county he was in to Douglas County.
Wow. Wow.
And just like Miss Arnold said, once you got them registered, you had to go back
to get them to the
get them
polls.
to the polls.
I know.
But most of we were door to door. When Brown Street apartments, we got all those people.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you guys did a lot of, I mean, legwork, footwork. That's why you guys would probably call the foot soldiers. And Mr. Vance, I'm assuming going to door and making sure that these individuals were not only registered to vote, but you grabbed them by the hand and said, okay, let's get to the polls and vote. So I'm assuming that that was a key element in the success of what you guys were doing, correct?
Right.
Correct.
One of the ladies I worked with at the poll, she met this guy and asked him if he knew me. And he said no, and she said, she worked the poll. He said, oh, that's that old lady that go around trying to get everybody to vote. Which was good.
Yeah.
Well, good. And I think that's some of the things which you guys have done. I mean, I think this is what make Douglasville and Douglas County what we are today.
Yes, definitely.
And I think you guys have done some wonderful things. Mr. Vance, talk to us about, I mean, your life on the council. I mean, what happened then and what's happening now that you've noticed that on city council and city government?
Okay. The term I served was relatively smooth. It wasn't too many big issues, and it was unique that the fact that the first year that I served on the council, that we were just one vote short of a majority.
Okay.
There was 7 members, 4 at large and 3 wards, and we had one of the large posts and 2 of the ward posts.
Got you. On one of these voting days, what kind of turnout? How did that happen in that era to make sure that, I mean, we talked about you guys going out and doing this, but what kind of numbers were at the polls then that you can recall?
Like, I was with Stewart
Okay.
after I left the armory when they got the new. Well, like 500 and 600 people would vote on, regardless of what the election was about, but not anymore.
Right. Right. I think we think we're here now, and we don't see and understand the importance of it now. But I think if you had to send a message to those that are out and watching this particular program, what message would you send? I know, would it be voting? Would it be what would be that message to somebody who's watching the program to say?
Voting. Yeah. I think the young people need to know that we have come a ways, but we have a ways to go. And it's very important, I'm like Miss Parker and Mr. Vance, it's very important that they get involved in their community and know what's going on and get out to vote, because they realize once they get in the mode of doing this, they will realize that people power changes things. And that's what we need and you get that through voting.
Welcome back to Continuing Moments in African American History, one of the special programs provided to you by City TV. And I want to say thanks to City TV for all the hard work and all the journeys that we took in pulling together all these interviews. Again, my name is Henry Mitchell. In this segment, you'll have the opportunity to interview and be a part of the interview with me and Leonard Danley, who was one of the first African American judges on the judgeship here in Douglas County. Also, you'll sit down and be a part of one of the first African American city council member, which is Homer Danley. Join me as we sit down and talk with the Danleys. You were the first African American that was elected in the office as a judge. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. Yes, I was the first, and from that, once I started to associate with other judges around the state, I guess they found some favor because it was at that point that the late Governor George Busby first appointed me to the Justice Court Training Council, which gave me the opportunity to interact all over the state with different people, and that was quite an experience. And many of the things that I learned, I was able to come back here, and it sort of enhanced the kinds of things I wanted to do for the community in Douglas County.
You blazed the trail on being the first judge, but that didn't come easy. That took some work.
Well, I think, first of all, you have to be sort of in the public, and I owe a lot to, there are two ladies that I owe a lot to, other than my mom, who is just supreme, but Miss Elaine Riley. Elaine Riley was the director of the Department of Family and Children Services for Douglas County for a long time, and she's very close to my mom, and she asked me to serve on the board of directors for DFACS, and I accepted that, and that really got me started in the public. And then when we talk about being elected countywide as a judge, a magistrate, that can be accredited to the late Betty Waldrop. Betty Waldrop expired in '07. A very good friend of mine, because she came to me and she says, "Leonard, you know, Winston's going to be losing their justice of the peace, and you ought to run for that." And I thought that was really strange for, you know, and I knew Betty. Everybody who knows Betty Waldrop, right, she's just a lot of fun, a very fun-loving person. And I did that, and we put it on the radio and did all the little things and got elected. So, yeah, when you asked the question, was it a tough road? I mean, those two people, the late Betty Waldrop and then Elaine Riley, were very instrumental in me getting into the community. And the rest of it is what you know already.
Where did you see your role as an African American? Because now remember, you talked about having to deal with Mr. Worthen and a few others. So you had a key role and you played your role. What was that role?
I think it was just everybody just automatically knew what their role was going to be. Okay. You know, I would meet and we'd talk and we'd organize and we'd develop strategies. And as I said, because of the sensitivity of the leadership of the county and city, there was not a lot of fanfare. And I think a lot should be said about that. Douglas County did very well. You never saw us in the news. I'm not talking about some isolated incident down here where somebody go and burn something. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about we were able to accomplish a number of things without a lot of fanfare, and it's a credit to the leadership of Douglas County and the city.
What's important that we need to make sure as African American men, or just as African Americans and as a community, that's important in reference to Black history, that we need to really focus in on?
And I want us to understand that we need to look at folk based on qualifications. If we look at people based on qualifications and what they bring to the table, that Douglas County will continue to be a good county, and not get sidetracked, and you know, not let because if it gets too turbulent, the plane will go down. and I don't want that to happen. I think we have a lot to be proud of in how we've accomplished things, especially in race relations, and I would hope that we could continue to do that.
Tell us about when that journey took you to Douglasville at City Hall, and how did that go?
Okay. Well, I came back to Douglasville, and of course with EOA and Leonard and Dorothy Arnold and Miss
Mother
Parker,
Parker, yeah,
and
yeah.
James Banks and Ben White, the whole crew, they were in full force. And of course Leonard says, "Hey man, you ought to run for city council." And I'm like, "Oh Leonard, come on now. You know, we've had a few successes here and there, but that's just not going to happen." Anyway, being as persuasive as he is, he talked me into doing it, and of course I did win and became the first African American to hold that position. But I think the thing that was really interesting about it is what I say to people a lot of times. It wasn't a black issue, a black and white issue. It really wasn't at all, because actually some of my best friends and some of the people who really helped me the most were not black. You
Correct.
know? And it became a joint of us together, because they realized that they had needs that were tied up in my needs
That is
and the
correct.
needs of that community. So it really, really worked well. And I felt honored to be the one who they selected to push forward to get that opportunity. But really the success has to go to the community and to those
Understood.
foot soldiers. They're
Understood.
the ones who made it happen on every
yes.
level.
And we've had a chance to speak with the foot soldiers.
Okay.
But take us back.
Okay.
Take us down this road.
Okay.
Take us on this journey. When you walked in, or when you first was voted in,
Yes.
and you were sworn in,
Yes.
and you sat there
Okay.
amongst your counterparts, your colleagues.
Sure.
Give us that, relive that moment, and let us feel the moment of how it was sitting there
Okay.
amongst your colleagues.
Okay.
You're the only African American,
Sure.
and you've got your needs. They've got their needs. How did you do that? How did it work?
Well, I think the thing that was probably most interesting was that I felt like I brought as much to the table as was at the table. You know, it wasn't a situation where I came in there and these people are, you know, doing this, that, and the other. So I really had a lot of experience. I brought a lot of knowledge to the council and this type of thing. So I was able to walk with them and not behind them.
Correct.
And of course, some people found, you know, had issues with that, because I didn't just go into the council to sit down and say, you know, yes, whatever y'all want me to do type thing. I went in there thinking, you know, let's try this, let's try that, let's be creative and spontaneous. So in that process, you gain the respect of some and you get slammed by others, you know.
Correct.
But it really worked well.
Who was the mayor at this time? Who was the mayor, and how did you and the mayor, what was that relationship with you and the mayor at that time?
Tom Wortham was the mayor at that time, and we had a decent relationship. I think he was really old school, so
Okay.
you know, I think he went as far as I could have ever expected him to go. You know,
Gotcha.
because he came from a whole different background,
Correct.
a whole different time period, but he never tried to stop me or fight me or anything of that sort. But I just think he was probably overwhelmed with this whole new idea of here's come somebody that, you know,
Of
but
color,
yes,
and, and trying to understand that, as you talked and spoke about, your need wasn't just African American.
Right, that's right.
It was about the community.
It was about the community.
And sometimes, for those who don't understand, that's the importance, and not the fact of whether or not you're African American.
That's
but
right, that's
I mean,
right.
can we all make this work?
That's right.
Because if it's good for us, it may be good for them. But how can we make it good for the overall city? I guess I would say.
That's correct. That is
And
correct.
that was your approach, I would
Yes,
assume.
that was the approach. And like I said, it was on every level and every adventure. There was always somebody there who really just, you know, stood up for you. I like to take credit for all of the different things I've done, but I really have to give credit to the family, starting with the family and the community. People like Miss Parker and Dorothy Arnold and Leonard Danley and James Vance and that group. And of course my mom, I have to give her, because she was the beginning of all of it. But as I think back, I also have to mention where I am today. And of course, my wife Florence and my two lovely daughters, Fun and Fair, are such a vital part of my life. They are the ones who kind of keep it going and keep it together. You know, sometimes if I want to know how I'm doing in something, I can always ask Florence, and she's there. And I mention that because as we go forward as a black community, we've got to start thinking more about the family. We've got to get the family involved in stopping drugs and stop the shooting and getting rid of guns and these type of things. And I'm just so appreciative that I know that because I have a family who does that for me.
Hi, I'm Frederick Perry, Human Resources Director for the City of Douglasville, and we're proud to present this special feature on Black History Month on City TV.
Wow, this has been a nice journey. Continuing moments in African American history. I'm Douglasville's Mayor Pro Tem. Welcome back. Now, I must say, you had a chance to see and witness this journey of the first African American elected judge, the first young lady to walk through the schools of Douglas County High School. Now, let's take a journey to the exhibit. This is one tour that I think every family member in the city of Douglasville and in the county needs to go by and see. It's called the Black Educational History Exhibit at Douglas County Museum of History and Arts in downtown Douglasville, at the old courthouse. You know where that is. Go by and take a visit. You get an opportunity to find out more about R.L. Cousin, Benny White, and others. But we want you to take the visit, but take a short tour with us as we take the journey to this museum and see some of the artifacts that I think you're gonna find amazing. Again, welcome to Continuing Moments in African American History. Now let's go and take this journey.
Welcome to the Old Courthouse Museum of Douglasville. Starting with Hutchinson High School that began with classes in 1932 and going all the way up to R.L. Cousins High School, which ended in 1967. We've been going all over the city, gleaning what we could from whomever we could, so that we do have it on display for you to see and remember.
My name is Frankie Mullins Morris. I am right now the coordinator of BHE, and I'm also class president of R.L. Cousin High School. We were so excited because now we had a new school with running water, in bathrooms, a cafeteria where we only had to pay 25 cents for lunch, and that was amazing.
I'm Jackie Hopkins. Jackie Copeland Hopkins is what you will probably remember me as, and I was a student at Hutchinson High during the 50s. When I did graduate in 1956, I was valedictorian of my class. And this is the speech that I made as valedictorian at Zion Hill Baptist Church in May 1956.
My name is Denny Bridges. I had an opportunity to play organized football. I was on the first organized black high school football team at R.L. Cousins. I'm very proud of that fact. But I need to share with you, we played 10 games that season, and we played them all on the road. And the reason being is that we didn't have a facility to use.
That is me 42 years ago. I graduated when I was 17 years old. That's Douglas Smith, but 42 years ago. We got a band, I think, in 1962. We did not have money to get uniforms. We didn't have money to get instruments or whatever. But we started out with 2 instruments, really. Trumpet, saxophone, and Mr. Rogers brought some of his personal instruments from his home and letting us use them. You see Mr. Stewart, he was the guy that took an old closet, a little bit larger than this. Once we got uniforms and everything, uniforms and the instruments, and made a band room out of it. You know, just cleaned out the closet and hung the hooks, and a lot of this stuff he did personally, himself.
My mother did play a part. She's one of the oldest living educators in the county. She will celebrate 95 years on February the 11th of this year. My mother started at Hutchinson teaching many years ago, and she taught at R.L. Cousins. This happens to be an article from the Douglas County Sentinel talking about black history a few years back, and I'm glad we were able to capture that.
So Mr. Steele, James Steele, he was actually one of our music teachers.
Matter of fact, he was the third music teacher that was at our real cousin back in the 60s. And as you see, he was and he got elected to, excuse me, to be superintendent of schools.
These are the teachers. Almost all of these teachers I had at one time or another when I was at Hutchinson High. And they are the reason that I am who I am today. Because with the limitations that they had to work with, they gave us all they possibly could give us, and it made us the people that we are today, and we're very strong because of that.
The fellowship and the love that we had for each other, and the patience that the teachers, especially Mr. J.W. Stewart, because he was our new principal, and he was great with all of us because he knew our parents and we couldn't do anything wrong. So, and he was just like a father.
I'm Catherine Wynn. I'm on the board of directors here at the Old Courthouse Museum. And in addition to the Black History Schools, we have some more artifacts here that were donated from some of the older people in Douglas County. Some of y'all might remember Benny White, the photographer that was here in Douglasville on Church Street, and he donated this machine, his family donated this sewing machine from his mother's estate. And we're proud to present it here in the old museum. This piece we have here is from the estate of Frank Glass. He was one of the first blacks that owned his own business, a grocery store and a restaurant. And this furniture piece and this stove was donated from his estates. This chair was donated by Glenn McClarty from his mother's estate. Glenn is an employee of the city here in Douglasville. And we hope you enjoyed the tour, and we'd like for you to come and see more things that we have here. We're open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 until 5, and any other time by appointment.
This has been a great journey in continuing moments in African American history. You had the opportunity to be a part of history for those who paved the way, for those who set the standards when it comes to voting and being a great African American. Hopefully you've enjoyed the guests. And I know as a youth, that individual now can understand how it started and how and where we're going. This is one I think we all should be a part of. Again, thank you for being a part of this continuing moment in African American history. Special thanks to City TV and the City of Douglasville for allowing us to have such a great program. And thanks to you for being a part of history. For those who have set the standard, who have set the pace, and who have paved the way for you and I, again, thank you for being a part of continuing moments in African American history.